So I will start with English presentations here in this stage, NAKA stage. One of the biggest challenges about adopting Bitcoin is the stability or the volatility of Bitcoin. So one of the most amazing tools I have seen developed in the last year is Stablesats. For that purpose, Arvin will be presenting Stablesats through Blink API. So please, let's hear it for Arvin.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Okay, so today I'm going to be presenting the Blink API and how you can access Stablesats through it. So what we've been doing, we've been pretty much running the Blink wallet for the last few years and getting a lot of practical experience on what it takes to, I guess, create a Lightning wallet, an on-chain wallet, and have tens of thousands of users use it and do so in a stable way, a reliable way. And we're at the point now where we decided that it's time that we can expose some of that functionality through an API that's accessible to developers. So it's pretty much the same API that we use in the mobile app, but it's now presented in a more accessible way. So what I'll be doing today is going through some of what makes up the API and how you can access it and what you can do with it and how Stablesats kind of factors in there. So, yep, mobile app to the API now. Right, so what's inside the API? So these are some of the features that we have in there. So first, to start with, it's a GraphQL interface. I guess people may be used to either using a REST interface or a GraphQL interface. We use GraphQL because it's very mobile friendly. It's light on requests if you're doing requests back and forth with your backend server. It's very flexible. You can customize requests to a pretty significant degree. So it's great for working with mobile, but it's also, you can use it in server-side things and other client-side things. So it's, if you're familiar with GraphQL, I think you'd recognize a lot of things there. So liquidity management. A lot of what we do on the back end is maintaining channels, maintaining balances, rebalancing channels, making sure we have good routes to different parts of the network. It takes a lot. We have some data science things in there as well. We have monitoring on failed payments. We have a few different automations in there to make sure that our liquidity is always placed in the right place, so that when you make a Lightning transaction, receiving or sending, there's a very high likelihood that it completes successfully. Unified balance. So in the as I get into the API, you'll see where the balance comes in. But what we present is a unified balance that's both an on-chain and a Lightning balance. So for the end user, it's that you don't need to think about if you need to move funds across from one side to the other, if you have funds in your on-chain wallet, if you have funds on your Lightning side, when you send that sort of thing, it's presented as one balance. And yeah, volatility management through Stablesats, which is a synthetic USD implementation. And we have a talk, I think, from last year about how that works under the hood, so I won't go too much into that. But it's just that this is available pretty much in the same way that you would access the Bitcoin side of your wallet. You can access the Stablesats side of your wallet as well in the API. So yeah, this is small. This is a visualization of how we will be exposing access to the API. So we now have a web dashboard. It's available at dashboard.blink.sv. And pretty much what you see is you have your account, you can see your wallet, you can see balances, you can see transactions, and most importantly for developers who want to use the API, you can see API keys, you can create new keys, you can revoke existing keys, and keys have expiry limits on them. So they expire, it's a security feature that we've decided to put in there where keys expire and you can decide how long, like what the time frame is for that key to live. So this is live, you can play with this now, and I'll put some links at the end of the talk where you can see it. And yeah, I should have made these bigger. This is a visualization of the API Explorer. So if you're familiar with GraphQL, you probably know that it supports self-discovery. A lot of GraphQL implementations have a web page you can go to where you can see all the requests, all the mutations and queries. That's what they're called in GraphQL. And you can construct them on the fly and test them and see the responses that come back and stuff. So it's great for self-discovery. But what I'll do is I'll kind of explain at a high level what our API includes. So this is kind of a high-level view of all the things that are contained in the API. So to start with, we have an account. An account is kind of your entry point. It's the thing you get when you sign up. Accounts have usernames. You can have a username attached to it, and I'll talk about what that's used for later. And you have accounts, so, contacts. So whichever other accounts you've interacted with, they fall into your contacts, which again can be used for certain things I'll talk about later. You authenticate to an account by a user. So users, this is where the API keys come in, and this is kind of how you get access to things, how you can permission things, how you can scope things. It all comes in through the user and through API keys. Under each account, you have right now we have two wallets. You have a BTC wallet and a Stablesats wallet. Each of those wallets can send on-chain and Lightning. The important thing here is that it's completely, like, you don't know the difference when you're sending. It's not like you have to convert and send or anything like that. It's a normal Lightning invoice that you pay. It's a normal Lightning invoice that you receive to. And on the on-chain side, same thing. Normal Lightning, on-chain addresses that you send and receive to and from. And so the username on the account, we also use that to address the account. So under each account, you can set a default wallet. You can be BTC or Stablesats wallet. And the username almost acts like a Lightning address. So if you're familiar with Lightning addresses, once you configure that username, anybody from any part of the Lightning network, once they support Lightning addresses and LNURL, they can send to your account, and it would land in your BTC or Stablesats wallet, depending on which one you have configured. Right, and we also have intra-ledger payments. It's internal payments. So this is how you can send transactions to either your own wallet. So this is what we use to convert, for example, between BTC and USD wallets, or you can send to other wallets within our system once you have their wallet ID. So that's useful as well. And accounts, we have transactions at two levels. So transaction histories, you can see them either aggregated under the account, or you can see them per wallet. So you get a specific transaction history for each wallet. And we also have unauthenticated operations that you can do as well. So if I have the details of somebody's account, somebody's wallet, and I'm not logged in as them, I'm not authenticated as them, I can still do certain actions. So I can still create an invoice on their behalf. I can still check if that invoice has been paid. And that comes in, it's a useful thing. I'll get into where it's useful, like the sorts of applications it's useful for a bit later, but that's something that's also possible on the API. So who is this for? At this point now, I'm gonna kind of go through some use cases, some things we've seen, some things we've wanted to do, some things we've seen other people thinking about, kind of trying to contextualize, like, how do you take all these building blocks and make actual real-world applications from them. So it's just to give a flavor of the types of things you can do with an API like this. So to start with, right now, there's two modes you can think of to use the API. One is as an omnibus account. So if you're familiar with traditional banking, omnibus accounts are pretty widespread. It's that you get a single account and you build systems on top of that. It gives you send and receive capabilities. It gives you balances and transactions, that sort of thing. So if that's one mode of using it. Second mode of using it is if you're gonna enable things for other users who have accounts. If somebody else has their own Blink account and you want them to authenticate into a thing that you have, that's another mode that you can think of to build applications for. So let's start with simple sending and receiving, Lightning Send and Receive API. If you need a simple Lightning Send and Receive API, say you're not in a position as yet to set up your own infrastructure, to spin up your own node, to do your own liquidity management, that sort of thing. This is the kind of thing you can use to, I guess, enable that functionality. So merchants, that's a pretty standard use case. But then like things like ATM operators, we've had folks, I think the Lamasu ATM folks have integrated our API, and that's what they use to do their Lightning payments. On the user-owned side, you can think of things like where do you need a wallet, a drop-in wallet. So the LB extension, for example, Blink is one of the wallets you can drop in there, and then you can use your Blink wallet from something like the LB extension to do WebLN things, to do Nostr things, that sort of thing. So it's like those are the kind of things you can think about when you're thinking simple send and receive API. And what I'm going to do is highlight certain parts of the API that would enable this. So like, let's say if you want to do Lightning send and receive, you need a user to authenticate to an account. You need the BTC wallet and transactions list, and you just need Lightning send and receive mutations. Right, let's go on to integrating into existing solutions. So there's some common things that people usually ask for. Payment processing is one. If you have an online shop, if you have point of sale terminals that you need, BTC Pay Server is an example of a thing that's pretty well built out right now. They bring their Lightning functionality through a node that you own. So you would have to, again, spin up your own node and then put the authentication in there. They have other options as well, I guess, for custodial setups. But this is an example of something you can apply using our API to enable, like, if you want to enhance, if you want access to merchant payment processing, it's something you can use it for. Things like invoicing and billing, there's a company called ZapRight. I'm not sure if people are familiar with it, but they have a really nice suite of services as well. And it's the kind of thing where you can just slot a Blink wallet in there and get access to all those sorts of features. So if you're using the API, it looks like this. All you need is the Lightning create invoice mutation. Again, BTC wallet, account. You can see it gets really lean. You don't need the entire thing. You can just focus on a few mutations and unlock some of this functionality. If you're looking at new solutions, so things that don't exist yet, we've seen folks do mobile point of sale services. You can do things like, I'm thinking of hackathon projects we've seen. One team did split payments, for example. So they would have, they would set up a sort of thing where multiple people would have worked on a thing. They want to split that automatically. They would use the API to do that. If you wanted to, say for existing users are using Blink now to conduct a lot of their daily activity. If you're somebody who's spending, if you're buying things, if you're a merchant who's receiving payments, you have a transaction history, you have amounts, you have dates, you have categorizations, you have memos. You can probably use the API to build things that expose like some sort of new feature or functionality to existing users. So, I mean, if you look at bringing it in through the API, all you need is the account, wallet, and transaction queries to enable that. So it kind of gives you an idea of how you can use these different building blocks to enable different sorts of products, services, features, tooling, that sort of thing. Yeah, implementing overlay protocols. So I don't know if folks are, well, folks should be familiar with LNURL. There's LNURL pay, LNURL withdraw. LNURL pay is the thing behind Lightning addresses. We have our own Lightning addresses, so you can be username at blink.sv. But there's nothing stopping somebody from taking the API and putting another domain on that and having like different kinds of Lightning addresses, because all you need is certain mutations again from the API. If you wanted to do bolt cards, for example, custom bolt cards, again, you can use the API for that. If you wanted to integrate with Nostr, if you wanted to, say, for example, enable one-click zapping, there's things you can use on the API for that. It's pretty simple. Those things you just need to create invoices, mostly. Say, for example, for the Nostr, not for Nostr, for the bolt card one, you just need to, no, for the Lightning address one, you just need to create invoices. For the others, you need to do the opposite of that, which is sending. But again, it's just to give an example of how minimally you can target the API to unlock some of these use cases. So what does this look like if we add in Stablesats? So just to give an idea, the Stablesats wallet sits right next to the BTC wallet under your account. It can do everything the BTC wallet can do. The best way to think of it is that it's Stablesats or USD at rest, but Bitcoin in flight. So whenever it leaves the wallet, it leaves as Bitcoin. It gets converted and it leaves through an invoice, Lightning invoice, or on-chain payment. And again, it comes in. Anybody who has a Bitcoin wallet, any other wallet, they don't need to know anything about Stablesats. All they'll see is either a regular Bitcoin address if it's on-chain, or a Lightning invoice if it's Lightning. And then when it comes in, it gets converted and it lands as Stablesats. So that's kind of how we think about it. It's USD at rest, Bitcoin in flight. That's kind of what we're thinking. So if we revisit some of those use cases we're looking at, if you're looking at Omnibus, we saw an interesting demo recently. I'm not sure if folks are familiar with eCash mints. Like that's a new thing that's been coming up recently, but they're mostly Bitcoin denominated. We saw an interesting example where one of the guys working on this project did a prototype where he stuck a USD API in there, and he had like a stable eCash mint, like a USD eCash mint. So that's like an interesting thing you can do with Stablesats. For ATM operators, again, like there's a lot of risk when you're buying and selling because you're trading USD or whichever fiat currency, but then you're holding Bitcoin. And if you're not like as part of your business, maybe you don't want to be exposed to Bitcoin or to that much Bitcoin. So something like Stablesats where you receive Bitcoin or you pay out Bitcoin, but the thing you're holding is Stablesats, it kind of gives you that matching to the dollars that you're selling or buying. So it kind of is a way to sort of hedge some of that risk out of your thing. So that's the kind of things we're thinking of. For user-owned wallets, again, if somebody's doing a wallet in a browser or something, you can expose like a stable wallet to them. They see Bitcoin, they don't know, but when it lands in your wallet, it sits there as USD. It's good for like people who maybe have daily, monthly spending and they need to not be subject to the volatility of Bitcoin. So it's just the USD wallet side, and then you use the same exact mutations. You're just pointing it at a different wallet, and that's literally that. It's as easy as that to get access to Stablesats. Again, yeah, it's going to be similar. It's stabilizing existing solutions. For example, instead of being subject to Bitcoin volatility, if you're a merchant receiving payments, you can receive it straight to a USD wallet. So it's like you have USD, but you're still interacting with the network, with the Bitcoin network. So it's anybody else who's coming in sees the same thing. But you get this sort of stable component, which we haven't really seen yet so much in these existing solutions. Yeah, and it's just same mutations, but pointed at the USD wallet instead. I mean, even new solutions. So if somebody wanted to create a UX around a USD-only Bitcoin wallet, that could be interesting. So if you, let's say, for example, you presented a wallet where for the user it looks like cash, it looks like USD, but they're sending and receiving through Bitcoin. There's you can construct a use case like that using certain things in the API. If you wanted to do any sort of volatility tooling, maybe you wanted to expose trading or hedging or something like that, because you have access to both USD and BTC, you can create things from that. You can compose that in different interesting ways. And then for people who are already using Stablesats, using BTC in their daily lives, maybe they want to see insights into how that's being used. Maybe they need budgeting, categorization, profitability things. Like you can construct use cases from these things using just what we have in the API right now. Yep, so again, it's just these particular pieces of the API that you need to construct some of these things. Let's say for a stable wallet, you just need a USD wallet and send and receive. For a hedging trading tool, you just need the transaction history and maybe the intra-ledger payment mutations to be able to convert between the two wallets, between BTC and USD wallet. And yeah, for profitability insights, you don't even need send and receive, you just need a transaction history. So kind of gives you an example. So this is an interesting example from a hackathon last year, the Bolt Fun Hackathon, where one of the projects that I was involved in, we actually created a thing where we were like, okay, if people are buying and selling, or they're bringing BTC into their wallet, they're converting it to Stablesats, maybe they're converting it back over time, over using their transaction history, can we tell them whether they're net up or net down? And based on that, is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? So this was an interesting project where we literally just reimagined a UX, pulled in existing accounts, processed their transaction history, and then gave them these sorts of insights. So you kind of get an example of how you can use the API to create new UX, just user experiences and stuff like that. So yeah, and stabilizing overlay protocols, so the same ones I was talking about before. You could have a Lightning invoice that receives to USD. You can do interesting things like if you had a USD denominated Bolt card, so a card you can take out and just tap somewhere, it kind of starts to get close to what we have right now, right? It gets close to tap and pay, to a debit card, like that sort of thing. Again, stable Lightning address. It just needs a USD wallet and a receive endpoint that isn't even authenticated. It's really simple to get these things in there. Stable card, you just need to authenticate against a USD wallet and use the pay mutation, and that's it. You can build a stable card from that. So yeah, I think that's kind of what we're looking at, is just thinking about, here's this API, here's a few things that we have that we can expose in there. What can we build with it? Like, there's some interesting bits of functionality in there, and we're kind of curious to see. We use it ourselves internally for different things that we expose to our Blink users, but we're kind of curious to see what other people can build from it, because it is an API that we put a lot of time and effort into, and it's gotten to a place now where we feel like it's ready to be played with and used by other people. So to get started, dashboard.blink.sv. If you go there, you can create an account or log in using an existing account. You would see your API keys. You can create new API keys. You'd see your transaction history. It's the first one of the first slides I showed. We have some pretty extensive documentation now on dev.blink.sv. So you'd see it kind of goes into detail on how you can use the different queries and mutations and construct them with examples and actual live queries that you can send from there. The API Explorer that I showed earlier, you can access that from api.blink.sv /GraphQL. And then we have a workshop, actually, I think it's in 15 minutes or so. It's at 3:15 downstairs, where we'll be getting kind of hands-on with the API. We'll set people up with keys, or you bring your own account and you get keys. And we'll go through a few scenarios. I think we're going to be building an ATM, or looking, OpenArms is going to be running that one. And we're going to kind of get 3 steps where you can construct your first invoice using the API only. I think folks who construct it, we might be sending a payment to them, so that's an interesting thing. But yeah, that's happening in about 15 minutes. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks.
Do you want some questions? Just still have 5 minutes.
Yeah. If anybody has any questions,
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. I saw there in the graphic that a user can have multiple API keys, right?
Yeah.
So my question is, all these different API keys share the same balance?
Yeah. It's the same. They all point to the same account. The same. For now, we just have 1 account and 2 wallets, and all the keys that you create kind of point to that same thing. So I guess right now the only distinction is scoping. You can use different scopes on different API keys to give different levels of permission for different use cases or different expiry times. One could have, some could have longer times, some could have shorter times.
And is it possible to know from which API key came a transaction, or is also accounts?
I'm not sure. I'll have to check that. I'm not sure if we expose that. If we don't, we probably could. But yeah, I'll have to double check that to see. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like the historical.
Yeah, the metadata isn't added to the actual transaction history in an accessible way. Yeah, so the most you can see is when that particular API key has been used last.
Okay, thanks.
Now,
Cool.
Yeah.
Just to bring a bit more context on this, there is a use case for which we want to add that we already know, which is a ball card. So we want eventually to be able to, okay, I want to add an NFC card to my account, but you want this to be like in traditional finance, your debit card, you're not allowed to necessarily spend your whole balance on the debit card, right? You can only spend maybe $1,000 a day for security reasons, because now if you lose your card, you don't want someone to be able to get all the money out of the account. And so we want to add this, I think, at least for this use case of the ball card, where, okay, I can add no card to my account, but I want to limit how much money can be spent from this card. And the way we'll be doing it is that way, right? We want to say, okay, I can withdraw money from the account, but if I use this key, I have an allowance of maybe $100 per day, and so eventually this will be here. It's not here today, but we want to add it.
Yeah, it's still a very brand new feature. So we'll be adding things as we go along, and I think it's at. I should have put up. We have open chat at chat.galloy.io, where if you're developing on it, you can jump in there, talk to devs directly, request features, ask questions, that sort of thing. So yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Right,
Please Some applauses for Arvin. Thank you.